On this day, the 6th of January, 1367, the birth of Richard II. Richard II might never have been King of England. He was born on the 6th of January, 1367, in Bordeaux, France. He was the second son of Edward the Black Prince, heir to King Edward III. Richard's older brother, another Edward, father and son might have been Edward IV and Edward V in another timeline, was born in 1364, but died in 1371. The Black Prince died in June 1376 when Richard was just 9. A year later, in June 1377, Edward III died aged 64. Richard now succeeded his grandfather, aged just 10. He was surrounded by uncles, his father's brothers, who sought to help him rule until he reached the age of majority, but the young king's government soon became unpopular, and his uncle John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, was singled out and even accused of coveting his nephew's throne. Edward III had entered into what would become known as the 100 Years' War with France for the crown of that rich nation. It was an expensive and slow-moving affair. At the end of the 1370s, a new tax was levied. Known as the poll tax, it was instantly despised as unfair. When, in late 1380, the government tried to impose it for a third time, at a higher rate than ever, the country erupted. In June 1381, a force from Kent, under the leadership of a man named Wat Tyler, moved on London, ransacking John of Gaunt's palace and killing the Archbishop of Canterbury, Simon Sudbury, and the treasurer, Sir Robert Hales. In a shocking move, the 14-year-old king rode out to meet the rebels at Smithfield. Tyler was stabbed by the Mayor of London in a commotion, but Richard calmly appealed to the rest of the rebels for peace. There's some debate about exactly what happened next. Some historians believe Richard was playing a part, calming inflamed passions and ordering vicious reprisals once the mob had dispersed. Others suggest he was far more honest in his dealings with the rebels, that he genuinely sympathised with their complaints and intended to honour his promises to them, but his uncles forced him to go back on his word. If that's true, it might explain some of his later reprisals. Richard soon fell foul of some of his powerful nobles, whose noses were pushed out of joint by Richard's favourites. The Lords Appellant, as they became known, included his uncle Thomas, Duke of Gloucester, and the Earls of Warwick, Arundel, Nottingham and Derby, the latter being Henry Bolingbroke, the future King Henry IV. The merciless Parliament of 1388 saw many of Richard's closest advisers convicted of treason. The Lords Appellant effectively took control of Richard's kingdom, at least until John of Gaunt returned from Spain the following year, but they quickly lost popular support. Throughout the 1390s, Richard sought revenge against them, and they were slowly but surely eradicated. His uncle Thomas was sent to Calais as a prisoner, where he was strangled, apparently on Richard's orders. Henry Bolingbroke ended up in exile until the death of his father, John of Gaunt. Richard tried to take the vast inheritance into royal hands, and Bolingbroke returned to press his own claim. When he landed in 1399, he found a country fed up with the increasingly tyrannical and high-handed Richard, ripe for rebellion. Richard's efforts to assert himself had led to his own downfall, and he was forced to abdicate in favour of his cousin Henry, the first Lancastrian king. Henry imprisoned Richard, and he was reportedly starved to death, dying in February 1400. Plenty, though, thought that he had lived on.